Today we shall visit a 1960s utopia and also a 1960s disaster, as only one country could have done it. We'll see how cities combine the heady worlds of music and crime, as only one country really can. We'll see the finest cityscapes in the world, with casinos and skyscrapers like no other country could have done. And we'll be combining foods in a strange way, as no other country really could have done. Plus, we'll drop in on the arrival of the Pilgrim Fathers, the American Civil War, and possibly the silliest sporting sideshow you ever did see. Welcome to Travel Trivia ASMR and another gentle jaunt, this time around the USA. Where else? I've been looking forward to this one. Can there be another country, anywhere, which is somehow completely known, whether you've been there or not? You've seen it countless times on TV and movies, and if you're lucky enough to have visited, as I have, then it is an assault on the senses like nowhere else. It's just big, completely brash and brazen and boastful about it. It's one of the finest places in the world. If you're new to this channel and this is your first time here, well, hello. Thank you for coming along. I do hope you will like what you have found. If you've come back having been here before, well, thank you so much. I hope you've already pressed like on previous videos and even the subscribe button. If you haven't, do please do it now, because that helps the channel grow and gives us more control over, for example, where we can put those awful American things, adverts. I'd be absolutely delighted if you take part by leaving a comment at any time as well. The idea of these videos, these travel trivia ASMR quizzes, is I will set 10 questions related to the country in question, which is today the United States of America. And rather than going through the answers quick fire styly, we will do quite the opposite. We'll spend a good 10 minutes or so discussing the answers and raising further questions, sharing stories, and just sharing the joy of things that I have found on my travels. So, let us see what today's 10 questions are. At Walt Disney World in Florida, what does EPCOT stand for? You may well know that that is one of the theme parks at the Walt Disney World Resort, and it's not just a random word, it does actually stand for 5 words. Question 2. What national landmark was intended as a short-term advert for a housing estate? I say national landmark, it certainly wasn't intended to be one when it was built, but it has become one. You've definitely seen it. Question 3. How many casinos on the Las Vegas Strip are named after other cities? This is one of several questions in this quiz which will be open to argument, and in this one it surrounds what is a city, as well as perhaps what constitutes the Strip. We'll come to that. Question 4. How many buildings in the USA were the tallest structure in the world when built? That's the sort of question which you would think, well, there's a straightforward answer to that, right? No, quite the opposite. It is a knotty one, to say the least. It all depends on the definition of what a building and a structure is. Question 5. Which restaurant chain created the bacon sundae? There's our combination of food, bacon and ice cream. Question 6. Which musical city is, quotes, the most dangerous in the USA? And by that I don't mean of all the musical cities in the USA, which one is the most dangerous. I am talking which is the most dangerous overall. It just happens that the same city has a reputation for its musical history too. So, which one is that? Question 7. When is the Indigenous American National Day of Mourning? I shy away from saying Native American and certainly some other historical terms for those indigenous people. Some of them have sort of fallen out of favour, haven't they? But we may hear those terms in quotes later. Question 8. What caused the fire that has been burning under Centralia, Pennsylvania since 1962? You either know that one or you don't, but it's become a thing of folklore. I've known about this for years and years before I visited. I assume it's quite well known, but you tell me. Question 9. Which state was created by the American Civil War? There were, I think, just 2 states that were admitted into the Union during the American Civil War, but one of those can squarely be attributed to the war for its very being. It wouldn't have come into being were it not for the Civil War, or so it is said. And question 10, here's that silly thing to finish with. Who always loses the president's race at Washington Nationals games? A finer display of absolute daftness you will not see. Now, if you would like to jump straight to the answers to any of those questions, any of them particularly pique your interest, you can use the chapters to do so. I've put the timestamps in the comments, so if you drift off to sleep at some point and need to come back, you can use them to jump around as well. Now, a quick word about the map, which we shall keep in the background here. As usual, I've marked out the coasts in blue and the land borders in red. I'm not going to patronise you by telling you what the USA's neighbours are. Neither am I going to patronise you by saying what this is here. They've got to appear somewhere, and technically they should be all the way up there and over here somewhere. And the colour codes that I've used here, I've marked in yellow the states that I've actually been in, which is 21 of the 50. And I've also marked with a red dot the places that I'm going to talk about as central to the answer, either because they're the answer to one of the questions or because they are a sort of a decoy or something which prompted the question but turns out not to be the answer. You'll see what I mean. just because there's nothing marked in a lot of, particularly the central area here, don't be deterred. If you're a particular fan of, I don't know, Nebraska or somewhere, please don't go away, because I will also be mentioning other places that I haven't necessarily marked here, because they are interesting footnotes, but not necessarily central to our answers. And up here, I don't know if does a lake constitute a land border? I suppose technically it does, because it's not a sea coast in the conventional sense, but it would be incorrect, I think, not to show the Great Lakes, so hence the blue here. But I have marked in red the places where it's a river on the border and not a lake. So for example, the Niagara River, which flows between what is it? I think it flows from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, doesn't it? And then there's the river that flows between Lake Huron and Lake Erie, and then that peninsula of northern Michigan, which divides Superior from Huron. I could, of course, have asked how many of the Great Lakes actually sit on the border, or which of the 5 is the one that doesn't. I thought that was far too mainstream a question to actually include as one of our main questions, but there's a little bonus for you. Which of the 5 Great Lakes is the only one that is not on the border between USA and Canada? If you're not sure about that, we will be in that neck of the woods, so I'll remember to answer, I hope. So then, we get underway with question 1. At Walt Disney World in Florida, what does EPCOT stand for? Now the questions are more or less in the order of how I discovered them myself, and as you can see, I've been to Florida, and the first time I went to the USA was as a boy of I think 11 years old, with my father and my sister, and of course we're prime age for going to Disney World, and it was long before the European Disney World in Paris and those other ones elsewhere in the world. I think there were only 2 sort of Disney theme parks existing at that time, which was the original one at Anaheim in California, opened in the 1950s, and the one in Florida, which opened in the 1970s. And let's have a look at a map from Disney's official website, and you can see there that is all of the Walt Disney World resorts. And so, for example, at the top here we can see Magic Kingdom, and down here in the middle we see EPCOT. The official branding now has EPCOT as a normal word with a capital E, but everything else lowercase. It was originally an acronym where the letters stood for something, which, as we know, is the first question. There's the iconic spaceship-looking kind of golf ball. Is it called Space Center or something like that? I remember. I think it was at EPCOT where you went into a cinema and you reclined in the seats. They went back so far that you were basically lying horizontal and looking up at the ceiling, and it was a planetarium. That's what I vividly remember of EPCOT, and I also do remember that as one walked round the the Epcot Park, which was presumably around this lake here, there were exhibitions showing stuff from lots of different countries. And as an 11-year-old boy, I do remember thinking, oh, this is interesting to see all of these countries. How many of them are there here? But I must confess that as an 11-year-old, I didn't quite get as engrossed as I might do if I were to go back then now, because not wishing to be critical of the Epcot theme park, I think a lot of its spirit is aimed at adults, and we will see exactly why that is in a moment when we answer that question about what Epcot is. Of course, as a child, all you want to do at Disney World is go and see Mickey Mouse, right? And that's what you do. That's what happened at the Magic Kingdom. Now, some of today's Disney World is stuff that has been built since my visit in 1990. I could have sworn, for example, that I went over here to the Animal Kingdom, though I read that didn't exist in 1990. So my memory is hazy, to say the least, because we are talking about more than 35 years ago since I was here. So what is Epcot then? I've already mentioned the essence of it being a sort of scientific or technological focus. Well, Disney himself conceived it, and he conceived it to be here on the outskirts of Orlando. This red blob in the middle of Florida here. What should we call it? I'm not going to mark it as Orlando, although that is the nearest big city. I'm going to say this Walt Disney World. And alongside the Magic Kingdom, the core of Disney, the cartoon fantasy world, which opened in 1971, Epcot was added in 1982 to be a sort of a theme park version of a vision that Walt Disney himself had before he died in 1966. However, he didn't conceive it to be a theme park. That wasn't his intention at all. He thought he planned it to be a utopian city of the future. And what better than Wikipedia for this sort of thing? You can see there, apart from being a theme park, it was originally a concept, and it was intended to be, as I say, a utopian city of the future, which celebrated human achievement and technological innovation. And so I suppose it would have been a meeting point for the newest architecture and the newest ideas in industry and manufacturing. Here's a quote from Walt Disney himself. This is Walt Disney describing the genesis of Epcot, something which never did come to fruition exactly as he planned it. He wanted it to take its cue from the new ideas and new technologies that are now emerging from the creative centres of American industry. It will be a community of tomorrow that will never be completed, but will always be introducing, testing, and demonstrating new materials and systems. So in other words, it was intended to be a city that would never be finished, a city that would continue to evolve and always feature groundbreaking stuff. And there's a picture there which I suppose was created as part of the publicity for the original idea. So, EPCOT. Well, you probably have worked out already that COT is Community of Tomorrow. And by the way, it's not the first of its kind. The Disneyland in California, which predates the Florida one, it did have a place called Tomorrowland, which had similar ideas of featuring exciting and groundbreaking new things. So what is EP? Have you worked it out? Well done if you didn't know this and you've guessed. It is experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Experimental prototype community of tomorrow. And it obviously could have just been called City of Tomorrow, and that would have done the job, just as Tomorrowland does. But there's something about the acronym, isn't it? It's quite a thing in advertising. Pepsi is one thing that springs to mind. It's a 5-letter name, and also the fact that it's capital letters, and you think, oh, that must stand for something really exciting. You know, so it kind of has impact in the way that Community of Tomorrow doesn't. So the thing I've been trying to find out, but have failed to do so, is how did Walt Disney come up with this name? Was there a board meeting? Was he sitting in a bar, swapping ideas over several whiskies, or whatever he got up to? Because it's not just any old acronym. If you think about the nature of the sounds, the English language has 3 places in the mouth where you make plosive sounds, which is to say you create a small blockage somewhere in the mouth and then you release that blockage and the air comes out with a small explosion, hence the word plosive. And that is, the lips come together for p, the back of the mouth closes for k, and then the tongue touches near the top of the mouth for t. So EPCOT. It's just throwing out, it's spitting out all of the plosive sounds all at once into this really punchy acronym. And I would love to know the thought process that took the concept of Community of Tomorrow and gave him experimental prototype to add onto the front. I think it's one of the most brilliant examples of branding that has ever existed. And if you know anything more about the genesis, not just of the idea, but of the name, then goodness me, I would be thrilled to hear from you. So please leave a comment to share the knowledge. On we go to question 2 then. Question 2. What national landmark was intended as a short-term advert for a housing estate? Well, of course, you have heard of this place. I absolutely promise you that. And what I think we need to do for this is to borrow our old friend Google Maps. We are going to the place originally named by the Spanish as el pueblo de Nuestra Señora la Reina de los Ángeles del Río Porciúncula. Yes, settled by the Spanish in the year 1781 and called the city, or the, well, pueblo is not city. Back along, it wouldn't have been no more than a village, but now, of course, we would call it a city. The city of Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels of the River Porciúncula. That river is now just called the Los Angeles River, I think, and I believe it empties down into the sea down here at Long Beach. But the curious thing about Los Angeles is, I don't know if you can vividly see on the screen there, but its city limits are most peculiar. You might just be able to make out there that there's it's not a contiguous area. It's sort of interrupted by enclaves that are something else. And there's even one little corridor that comes down on the south side down to meet the coast, whereas other areas to the west and east of it are technically another city, so under the control of other authorities. So therefore, some of the famous names that we associate with the area of Los Angeles, for example, Beverly Hills and Santa Monica, those are technically not part of Los Angeles, they are technically other cities. Whereas Venice and Hollywood are part of Los Angeles. On the other hand, West Hollywood is a separate city again, so it's awfully confusing. And of course, unless you live there, it really doesn't matter. But it's curious, and I suppose what you do notice is you notice differing standards of, for example, rubbish having been collected up from the pavement, or you notice more homeless people in a certain part, and that's possibly because they pertain to one city, not another. All of those things that are part of everyday life, you can notice as you go round. This picture here, by the way, which Google Maps is showing us, I don't know where that is, but I want to know, is that MacArthur Park? If you know your Los Angeles, perhaps you can tell me in the comments. MacArthur Park is, of course, the inspiration for a song of the same name. You may know it. MacArthur Park is melting in the dark, all the sweet green icing flowing down. Someone left the cake out in the rain. I don't think that I can take it because it took so long to bake it and I'll never have the recipe again. An absolutely bonkers song, which is written by a man called Jimmy Webb, I think, and in interviews he never would say what exactly he was on about. So I assume, but I don't know, that song was named after MacArthur Park. And the only reason I know that is a real place in the city of Los Angeles is because I remember being there, and it was the day when I was due to fly out, and I think I'd even arrived by bus from Vegas that same morning, and so I had nowhere to go for the day until my evening flight. So I looked at a subway map and thought, well, where shall I go? And MacArthur Park jumped out at me. I thought, oh, I'll go and have a look at MacArthur Park. And of course, I wanted to see if someone had left a cake out in the rain. The nearest I found was a discarded packet of chocolate fingers in a waste paper bin, and it hadn't been raining. Anyway, what was the question? Oh yeah. What was the national landmark that began life as an advert for a housing estate or a real estate development? Now, I haven't the hope of finding it at random if I try and zoom in, because my eyesight is not up to that. But what I will do is put it in. For yes, we are talking about the Hollywood sign. I wasn't expecting a video to come up there, but thank you for it, Google. And there we see it is only just to the north of the city of Los Angeles, and I think it does count as part of the city limits. It was originally a marketing gimmick, put in the Santa Monica Mountains to the north of the city in the 1920s, and it was originally to advertise a real estate development, or a housing estate, as we might say in British English. And the idea was to get people to move out of the congested central area of the city and out into the hills. And I think that originally it was going to stand there only for a finite period. There it is. And in fact, the housing estate was actually called Hollywood Land. There was a further 4 letters there in its earliest days. I don't know if they fell down or they were taken away, but when the silver screen kind of took up speed and became lodged in everyone's hearts during the following decade into the 1930s, you start to see the emergence of Hollywood as a synonym for America's movie production industry, and so hence the Hollywood sign stayed. It took on a new life as one of the most recognizable emblems of the USA, full stop, I would say. Don't forget that this is before a lot of the skyscrapers and so on, which we'll be talking about later. And nowadays you can't get anywhere near it because it's a national landmark, and they're worried about people trying to blow it up, I suppose. And so you can't go up there and wander around it. But there was a time when I gather a man used to live up here behind the H, and the reason he lived there is because it was his sole responsibility to turn the lights on in the evening, then off again in the morning. These days, I suppose that's all electronic and computerized. But when was that? When was that first built? Oh, it only says 1920s in my notes. I don't know the exact year, but it's 100 years old, more or less, isn't it? And that is the answer to our second question. Where's my pen to write the answer? The national landmark, which was originally intended as a short-term advert for a housing estate, was the Hollywood sign. Back in the days when you did used to be able to go up and walk around it, I gather that one of the japes that somebody got up to was they changed the 2 O's there into E's to make Hollyweed. No doubt it was quite a customary thing for people to wake up in the morning and look up to the hills and see that somebody had decorated it in some new way. It doesn't happen now. But if you know of tremendous tales of silly japes, of decorating the Hollywood sign, or to put it another way, graffitiing it, then please do leave a comment and tell us all about it. Now then, we are going to move on to question 3, which may lead to argument. My favourite sort of question is one that leads to argument. Oh, I've just noticed I haven't written in, well, there's only one word to write, isn't there? I'm going to write Hollywood. And for question 3, we move just up the road to Vegas. How many casinos on the Las Vegas Strip are named after other cities? So this is potentially contentious for 2 reasons. First of all, what constitutes the Strip, and then what constitutes a city? Well, let's start with what is the Strip. Here is a street map of Vegas, and the yellow road going right through the middle is what is universally known as the Strip, although it's technically Las Vegas Boulevard, according to this map. And over here is the interstate that basically runs past the edge of town. Downtown Vegas is further up there, and so I think technically, and I learned this on my trip there, technically the city of Las Vegas does not include a lot of this stuff down here. Technically this is a city called Paradise, and so what the world calls Las Vegas and what the local council would call it is not the same thing. And so that's why I've deliberately said in the question which of the casinos on the Las Vegas Strip are named after other cities. So we're just taking into account the central yellow road there and the casinos that are on either side of it. So anything outlying over here, for example, like I think over here, there's a couple here that, for example, the Orleans, and there's another one I saw here that sounded city-ish, Gold Coast. Anything like that, which is not actually on the Strip. I'm discounting it just for the sake of giving question parameters. It was either that or take all of Nevada into account, and we'd have been here all day just on this question. So we're going to concentrate on the Strip only. But let's pop the name of the city there anyway. And to help us answer this, I'm going to go to a remarkable website, which is called Easy Vegas, and this is by a man called Michael Blue Jay. I have no idea who that is, but whoever he is, he's welcome to be in the same world as me. Let's put it that way, because this website is beautiful. It is a complete list of Las Vegas casinos, up to date on November the 18th, 2025, which is only a couple of months before this video is being recorded. And not only is it a complete list, but look, he's actually divided the casinos into those that are on the Strip and those that are close to the Strip, and those that are downtown, and those that are further away. So absolutely hats off to Mr. Michael Bluejay. Thank you very much. So the other point of contention then is if we look at these casinos, and I'm not going to talk in great detail about all of them, but if we look at those ones on the Strip, which ones are named after cities? Well, Aria is so named because of its opera connotations, I think. Bellagio. Here is our first potential argument. Because Bellagio, that's the one with the dancing fountains, isn't it? There is a place in Italy called Bellagio. It's on the shores of Lake Como, and I've been there, and I have read that the Bellagio, the casino in Vegas, is named after this place in Italy. However, Bellagio is not a city. The Bellagio in Italy is not a city. It's no more than a village. And therefore, I'm not counting it. So there. Caesar's Palace, obviously not a city. Casino Royale, that isn't either. Circus, no. Cosmopolitan, no. The Cromwell, I did double check this. I was looking at this list yesterday just to double check the origin of all of these names. That is apparently a nod to Oliver Cromwell of English history, but not a city. Encore, I think that's just got theatrical overtones. Excalibur, the legend of King Arthur, I suppose. Flamingo, there is a brilliant reason for this name. Flamingo, look at the date. Is that 1940s? Yes, 1946. That is apparently the first casino that really gained prosperity, and it was named after was it the wife or the girlfriend? I think it was the girlfriend of the man who founded it. And she apparently had long legs and red hair, so he called his casino Flamingo. Now, if there's not a more 1940s thing that you'll hear this week, I don't know what it is. Anyway, Flamingo is not a city. Fontainebleau, okay. Well, that is a place in France, which also I happen to have been to not so long ago. Is it a city? That's the thing. It is certainly a castle. It is Le Château de Fontainebleau, one of the former homes of the French royal family, and it was commandeered by Napoleon, and you can walk around it today and see the disgusting luxury that these people lived in. And I think the casino Fontainebleau buys into that sort of imagery of a luxury royal castle. But Fontainebleau is not a city. In any case, this is technically named after a casino that came before it in Miami, which in turn was named after the castle in France. And the castle in France is also named after the town that it's in. But note, it is a town, it's in the suburbs of Paris, it doesn't count as a city. So I'm discounting this one too. That is not a city. So we're on a grand total of 0 so far. Harrods, not a city. Horseshoe, not a city. The Link, not a city. Luxor, bingo, that's a city, which actually I happen to have been to as well. Luxor, the ancient capital of Egypt, of course, and possibly one of the most iconic sites in Vegas is the pyramid, which is supposed to represent Luxor, even though the famous pyramid in Egypt is not in Luxor, but I suppose that's being fussy. Mandalay Bay. You wait for one casino named after a city and two come wrong at once. Mandalay is a city in Myanmar. And of course, it was a place of poets, wasn't it? Rudyard Kipling, I think, wrote an ode to Mandalay, and that's why you get the song all about Mandalay. And so it evokes kind of an exotic location, and I've no doubt that the casino is supposed to be conveying all of that. Anyway, Mandalay is a city in Myanmar, so that's our second one. Did I mention I've been there too? MGM Grand. That's Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, so that's not a city. New York, New York. Do I need to check? No, I think we can be safe in assuming, even without checking, that that is named after the city of New York. I've been there as well. We'll be going there later. O'Shea's. That's just a guy's name, sort of conveying Irish heritage. Palazzo is the Italian word for palace, so not a city. Paris. You've probably seen the pictures of the Eiffel Tower, which is a replica on the Vegas Strip of the original one in Paris. So of course that is named after the city of Paris, which I have been there as well. And we'll also be visiting Paris in a way in a future question. So that's our fourth one. Park MGM, no. Ooh, fact fans, the only non-smoking casino in Vegas. Is that a good thing? Planet Hollywood? Ooh, contentious. Yeah, Hollywood. Hollywood. See previous remarks in previous question. Hollywood is not a city. It is part of the city of Los Angeles. And there is also a city called West Hollywood, but the Hollywood, as in the Hollywood side in the movie industry, is not in West Hollywood. So I'm discounting this. This might be the one that angers you, and if so, please defend Hollywood in the comments if you like, but I'm not counting that as a city. Resorts World, really? Of all the rubbish names for casinos, I'm sorry, that's terrible. Sahara, obviously a place but not a city. Slots of Fun. Oh, I take it back, Resorts World. You're not the worst name on the list. Slots of Fun. That's daft. Strat. I assume that's an abbreviation of stratosphere. I remember I went up to the top of stratosphere, up to the sky deck. Remember that. But it's obviously been redubbed, renamed. Stratosphere is not a city. Treasure Island isn't either. Venetian is the adjective for Venice, so yeah, I'm counting that as a city, and Wynn, I think, is named after the man who built it. So then, after all that argy-bargy in the line out, I am saying that the casinos in Vegas that are named after cities are Luxor, Mandalay Bay, New York, New York, Paris, and Venetian. 5 is the answer. And if you disagree, or if you think I've left something out or included something I shouldn't, then let's be having you. Just before I leave the topic of Vegas, I'm delighted to say that I've never been a gambler. I'm not. I didn't really go to Vegas for the sake of gambling. I went because it is a total spectacle. It is like nowhere else. It's a theatre show from the moment you set foot there until the moment you leave. And so I didn't really go for gambling, but of course you have to stay in a casino. There is no hotel there. That is not a casino. And then, of course, they make you walk through areas of gambling in order to get to your room. And so there was one evening when I thought, oh, okay, then I'll have a go at this gambling. And I handed over $1 to get some chips to put into some slots. I had no idea what I was doing. I just pressed buttons at random, and I won after a couple of goes, and I think I won something like 50 cents. I decided to reinvest that and put that in another machine, and there came a point when I had $1.75 of chips in my hand, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take that and run. I left Vegas with 75% profit. So I dare say there are people who dream of being able to say that. Tell us your Vegas story in the comments. It'd be thrilling to hear it. On we go to question 4 then. How many buildings in the USA were the tallest structure in the world when built? Now, if you thought that the last question was just asking for an argument, then you ain't seen nothing yet. I've talked about this in some previous videos here on Travel Trivia ASMR, and the question comes about because of a certain tall building that I had the pleasure of visiting. There it is. Wonder if you recognise that one. I like this photo, even though it's slightly sun drenched, and the way that the sun beams off the glass means that you don't quite see it in high definition. But I like the way it sort of disappears from view up into the sky, and of course the old red, white and blue is fluttering in the foreground there. This is the Willis Tower, previously known as the Sears Tower, in Chicago. And Chicago is one of the places on the map here. There it is on the southwest corner of Lake Michigan. Ooh, that reminds me. Lake Michigan is the answer to that question I threw in as a bonus earlier. Of the 5 Great Lakes, it's the only one that's not on the US-Canada border. The others, Ontario, Erie, Huron, Superior, are on the border, but Michigan isn't. Chicago is also home to an undisputably tall building, and if you go to the Willis Tower, one of the things that they tell you is when this was built, it was the tallest building in the world. But the wording of the question is very careful, because just because it's the tallest building in the world doesn't mean it's the tallest thing. It doesn't mean it's the tallest structure. How many buildings in the USA were the tallest structure in the world when built? So what is a building? What is a structure? Now there is a body of people who have actually set down rules for this, and I can never remember their exact name, and I deliberately haven't written it down to get it right, but it's something like the Council of Deciding What a Tall Building Is and Generally Being a Spoil Sport. It's something like that. The Council on Tall Buildings. Guess where they're based? Yes, that's right, Chicago. And so they have decided, and they've laid down the law. Let's just find some Wikipedia to help us here, because this is the very bread and butter of Wikipedia, isn't it? Lists of what are tall buildings. And you'll see here's a history of world's tallest buildings, and here is a history of world's tallest structures. Now, this Council on Tall Buildings, they've decided, and it may even be in here somewhere. Oh yeah, here we go. Meaning of building. For something to count as a building, it basically has to have a human function from ground to roof. And I'm just trying to see in this unutterable diatribe about what a building is. I can't see it jumping out at me. I wonder if it's in. Oh, is it in this one? Structures. Oh, I'm not seeing it now. But that's the essence of it. The essence of what is a building is that if it's just a solid lump and there's nothing inside it, then it doesn't count as a building. So take that one, which at the time of recording is the tallest building in the world. It's also the tallest structure in the world because it is a building. The Burj Khalifa is a thing which serves a function, whether residential or commercial or manufacturing, or there's something in there on every floor from the ground up to the roof. I think they give a little leeway at the top for transmission aerials and so on. But if you think, let's find a picture of have they got any other pictures of structures? Tell you what, there is one. Let's just examine these green fields, which are going to be key. The green in this table means that it's taller than all past structures, including destroyed structures, at the time of completion. And so the earliest known structures are things like temples and pagodas. Pyramids, of course, in ancient Egypt are not technically buildings in the sense of having a function from ground to ceiling. They're tombs. There is nothing inside them for the most part. And so in the modern definition of a building by our Chicago friends, they wouldn't actually count as buildings, but they would count as structures. The same with a pagoda. It is not a building that is occupied from floor to ceiling. And then you get into churches, which is a grey area, isn't it? A cathedral, well, I mean, it's a big space between the ground and the ceiling. And I suppose you could say that, therefore, it is occupied by humans from floor to ceiling, even though this, on the face of it, at least if you were standing outside, there isn't much to choose from between a cathedral and a pagoda and a pyramid. But anyway, this is why this question is so complicated. So let's come to the USA. I'm just going down a chronological list of the tallest, this is the list of tallest structures in the world, okay? And here's the first one that is in the USA. In the year 1884, the Washington Monument is completed, and it is the tallest structure in the world at 169.29 meters. I am going to click through to a picture of it because it's a good example of when a structure is not a building. It is not serving multiple functions or even one function, but constant occupancy from ground to ceiling. So therefore this council on tall buildings spoils the party and says, nope, sorry, Washington Monument, that is not a building. Let me just lift this up to go back. So Washington Monument, the tallest structure in the world on completion, but not the tallest building. Then you get the Eiffel Tower coming along, which again is 312 metres tall, but it is a structure, not a building. At the same time, I'm going to go to this list, this other list, which gives us, down we go, down through time, and we get to high-rise skyscrapers. Yeah, so the era of the skyscraper comes along in the USA, and so the USA begins to have the tallest buildings in the world, in the official sense of human occupancy from ground to ceiling. And so you get Philadelphia City Hall, the tallest, quotes, building in the world, which is completed in 1894, height of 167 metres. But that's nothing near as tall as the Eiffel Tower. That's surpassed by the Singer Building in New York, the Metropolitan Life Tower in New York, the Woolworth Building in New York, and 40 Wall Street in New York. All of them exceed the previous one, and we get up to 283 metres. But the Eiffel Tower is still there at 312, so the tallest building is not the tallest structure. In case you're not keeping up yet, so far the answer to the question, how many buildings in the USA were the tallest structure in the world when built? The answer is none. However, the Chrysler Building in New York City, when completed in 1930, is 318.9 metres tall, and the very next year the Empire State Building at 381 metres. They are on the list of tall buildings, and they are on the list of tallest structures. There they are. So there we have it. Two buildings built in the USA were the tallest buildings in the world and the tallest structures. Then, in the world of structures, I hope you're keeping up. And I hope if you were trying to get to sleep that this hasn't totally spoiled your efforts. That's the trouble with ASMR sometimes, isn't it? It can be so engaging that it defeats the object. Anyway, we've had the Chrysler Building, we've had the Empire State Building. We then start to see lots of structures in the USA which are the tallest structure in the world, but they're not buildings. And this is where it's worth looking at the map, actually. Well, let's go through the list and then I'll repeat them with reference to the map. We've got the Griffin Television Tower in Oklahoma. I won't bother with the year and the height for each of them, but that's 1954. Then we get the KOBR-TV Tower in New Mexico, and then another one in Maine, and then another one in Missouri, and another one in Georgia. And so TV towers in the USA are ruling the roost here, one taking over from another: Knoxville, Tennessee, North Dakota, and I think that's the last one before Warsaw beats them all. And so there you've got 7 TV towers starting in the 1950s in Oklahoma, New Mexico, Maine, Missouri, Georgia, Tennessee, and North Dakota. I haven't put those blobs on the map because I'm saying no more about those places, but there the USA had 7 structures that were the tallest in the world when built. And there are 2 more that are worth honorary mentions, and they are on the list of buildings. We're back to the list of buildings here. Where are we? There we go. The World Trade Center, and then the Sears Tower, which is the one that we started with. The World Trade Center, of course, the original one, which was destroyed in September 2001. Sears Tower overtook it. I think there was a bit of argy-bargy between the two, actually, where one extended its aerial so as to go past the other. I assume that there is some prowess, some significance, some privilege in being the world's tallest building or the world's tallest structure, and therefore it matters that this Council on Tall Buildings have made rules for it. I assume that that's the case. Otherwise, what is the point of this whole conversation? Don't answer that. Thankfully, the Burj Khalifa is the top of the table now, regardless of how you classify a building or a structure. So then, the answer to our question. Counting everything that we've seen on both lists, we discount the Washington Monument because it's a structure, not a building. It's a structure, but not a building. We can discount Philadelphia City Hall and the Singer Building and the Metropolitan Life Tower and the Woolworth Building and 40 Wall Street because they were the tallest building in the world, but not the tallest structure. We can count the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building. In 1930 and 1931, they were both the tallest building in the world and the tallest structure in the world, and everything since does not count because those TV towers that I mentioned are not buildings, and the Sears Tower and the World Trade Center, although the tallest buildings at the time, there were structures bigger or taller than them both. Oh, I'm out of breath now. The answer to the question is 2. Just the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building were both the tallest building in the world and the tallest structure in the world when built. A little footnote, by the way, and I'm actually going to mention, I'm going to write New York City onto the map here. There's Long Island poking out, so that's New York City. A little footnote about the tall buildings of New York City. Well, the new One World Trade Center, they didn't attempt to become the tallest building in the world. They did something even better than that. They decided that the new One World Trade Center would be 1,776 feet tall, 1776 feet tall. 1776, of course, being the year in which the USA began. Maybe I should have just asked that all along. How high is One World Trade Center? We could have saved ourselves a lot of time. Shall we go on to question 5? Here we go. Which restaurant chain created the bacon sundae? Now, I dearly wanted to include a question in this quiz that was all about food. Because let me tell you, when I went on my 3rd trip to the USA, the first having been Florida, the second having been this southwestern area, the third one was this mega road trip in the northeast, which included 17 states. And a friend and I flew into Chicago, and we flew out of DC at the end, and we did a sort of a circuit, popped into Canada and then came up into New England and sort of scooted around here. The very first thing we did, having landed in Chicago, we didn't stay overnight in Chicago. My friend noticed that an hour's drive to the north we could be in Wisconsin, so we went to Wisconsin, and over the state line there was a town called Pleasant Prairie. And I know nothing about that town other than it had one of the most amazing restaurants I have ever been in. And it wasn't amazing because it was particularly noteworthy. I'm sure that in the USA it's an absolute par for the course kind of place. The fact is that we'd just come in from Europe, and so any American eating experience was going to be absolutely incredible. So it was that we went to Dickie's Barbecue Grill, and I don't know what we ordered, but it was the most enormous thing that I ever saw, the most enormous pile of waffle fries, the most delicious burger, whatever it was we had, with constant refills of drinks. It was an evening entitled Welcome to the USA. And so it was that it set the agenda for our road trip, because one thing that we decided to do is, if we're going to visit 17 states, which I admit was in a fortnight, so we didn't even stay overnight in some of them, we decided we can't just drive through them and say that we've been there. We've got to somehow mark our presence in each state. And so it was decided that we would do two things. First, we must eat something, whether it was, obviously if we were staying overnight, we were going to be going to a restaurant anyway, but in the states that we were just driving through, like Indiana and Ohio, and I think Connecticut and Virginia, in those places we weren't going to stay overnight, but we had to have a stop where we ate food. That was the first thing. So we're sort of contributing to the economy, but also giving ourselves something to remember. If we hadn't got out of the car on the interstate, we'd barely remember anything. The second thing we decided to do is that in each state we would write a limerick. And for those who may not know, a limerick is a 5-line poem named after the town Limerick in Ireland, I suppose, but it's supposed to be a little bit amusing, and there's a rhyming scheme that you have to follow. And so we set ourselves a challenge of writing a limerick. You'll be relieved to know that you're going to be spared those limericks for the most part, but I might tell you one about eating bacon and ice cream at the same time, or certainly bacon and sweet things. The question was, which restaurant chain created the bacon sundae? Now, there was a sketch show in Britain in the 1970s called The Two Ronnies, and they did a sketch where bacon ice cream was served, and it was supposed to be totally ridiculous. Nobody would ever combine bacon and ice cream. What on earth are you thinking? Yet, fast forward a generation or two, and that is exactly not just an obscure thing in a certain restaurant, but it's pretty mainstream now. I think bacon and maple syrup are frequently combined in American breakfasts. And when we were on our road trip, I'm going to mark the place. It's just here. We're coming, we've left Chicago, we've crossed over the north of Indiana. I think we did Indiana a disservice by just stopping for a coffee and a cake or something, and hence we ticked our food box. But by lunchtime, we were here in the northeastern, or is it, no, I suppose it's mid-central northern Ohio. This city not far away from Lake Erie. This town here is called Toledo, Ohio. There it was that we went into the restaurant Dennys. And Dennys, actually, let me double check. Did I put aside a picture what we ate. No, didn't find a good enough one. But the picture on this Wikipedia page is good enough. There is the Dennys ice cream sundae, the bacon sundae, and according to the authority that is Wikipedia, the bacon sundae was a product offering from Dennys in the US in 2011, which is only 2 years before I was there, which purveyed a maple bacon sundae in 2011, part of its limited time Baconalia, a celebration of bacon. Now this article goes on to say that Burger King then picked it up, and I think it even mentions a specific store in Nashville, Tennessee, where it was launched along with various barbecue sandwiches, sweet potato fries, and frozen lemonade. Okay, so I think that refers to the Burger King the year later. So as far as I can see, the bacon sundae was introduced in Dennys and it was rolled out nationwide in 2011. And that's the information that I tried to look up at the time and looked up again and have found nothing different. But I do have a question about it. The thing is, if you're going to roll out a product across a chain of restaurants nationwide, you do some tests first, don't you? You trial it. So there must have been in some part of the USA, and I hope and pray that it was the one I went to, Toledo, Ohio. Probably not, though. There must have been one branch of Dennys somewhere where they trialled this thing before they actually rolled it out. And even if there wasn't a public trial, there would have been a private one, or people would have been making bacon sundaes long before it was unleashed on the world by Dennys. So although Dennys is the answer to the question, Dennys gave the world the product called bacon sundae. I don't think for a moment they were the people to invent the concept of bacon ice cream, and I have not been able to find out who did create that. So if you have exclusive access to information about the history of bacon ice cream and you're able to tell us who first combined bacon ice cream, other than as a joke on a 1970s comedy show, then let us know. And if you let us know, let's all go there. Everyone who's already in this community, let's meet up and go and have bacon ice cream together. Here's the limerick. It wasn't just any old limerick that we had to write. We had to write about our experience in the state as well. Here it is. An Ohio man said upon waking, "For breakfast I'll have me some bacon, with white chocolate sauce, maple syrup, of course, plus ice cream, eggs, bacon, and bacon." You're welcome. From bacon and ice cream to music and murder. Which musical city it is the most dangerous in the USA? And as I said at the start, we're not just talking about which is the most dangerous of cities that happen to be musical. I'm saying the city that is credited, if that's the right word, as being the most dangerous in the USA is also a city which happens to have a great musical heritage, and so I put the word musical there as a clue. You might also get a sense from looking at the map, if you haven't already done so. And the question comes about because I visited a city on this road trip around the northeast, and I knew a very sort of conflicting thing about this city. I knew that it had prospered in industry, and I knew that it had fallen on hard times, and I therefore knew that it had a reputation for being a place where a lot of violent crime happened. I'm talking about the city of Detroit. There it is, and I have carelessly not thought about where I'm going to write. I'll tell you what, I'll take advantage of this gap up here. That's right, the word Detroit has an angle there. And there is, of course, a fascinating fact about Detroit. If you are a geography nerd, what's the fascinating fact about the border between USA and Canada at the city of Detroit? Here's Google Maps. There's Detroit. That's Windsor, Ontario. And here's, which lake is that? That's Lake Erie down there. That's going to be Lake Huron up there. And so Detroit has the, I don't know if it's unique, but certainly the unusual distinction of facing the Canadian border, but Canada is to the south, not the north, on the other side of the river. Anyway, so there we were in Detroit and thinking to ourselves, well, this city has a reputation for trouble, violent crime, and the guidebooks offered cautionary words about don't wander alone late at night and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't too concerned for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that a couple of years before I was there, my mother went there as part of a road trip. And I thought, well, you know, if my mother was prepared to go to Detroit, then I'm sure going to. But the second reason that I almost have a soft spot for Detroit is because of radio jingles. Now, you may know that for a long time in the 1970s through to probably the 1990s, I suppose, down here in Dallas, Texas, there were several production companies, one of whom was called Jam Creative Productions, and they produced all of the sing-along radio jingles that were on stations all across America and all across the world. And there was a time when I collected some of these because they were beautiful pieces of music. And I had CDs of them. You could write off to get CDs direct from the production company. And on one of their CDs, there was a new set that had been recorded for this radio station in Detroit called WNIC. And the NIC stood for the word nice. And so their strapline was, "It's nice in Detroit. It's nice in Detroit on WNIC." And these jingles were resung for various other stations in America. I can think of several in Britain where they had them resung. And I'll put a link in the comments, in the description rather, if I can find one, for a comedy show which was on British television in the 1990s, and it was called TV Offal, and they got this production company Jam to re-sing these Nice in Detroit jingles, but they made them about famous people, and of course they were quite rude about the famous people because it was a comedy show. Anyway, the original jingle is in itself quite funny when you consider the reputation of Detroit, the reputation of being a city that is past its glory days, the reputation as a city where violent murder happens. I think Lonely Planet, at the time of my visit, said something like the magazine Forbes has listed Detroit as the most dangerous city in the USA for the last 4 years. As a counterpoint to that, you've got the word of this jingle, which I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but I'll tell you the words. It said, "It's nice in Detroit in the morning with WNIC. Today is going to be easy. We want to make it clear. The sunshine's travelled millions of miles, but you can roll out of bed and you're already here." Hey, it's nice in Detroit if you listen to WNIC and believe the jingles. Well, suffice to say, I'm here to tell the tale. I wandered around downtown Detroit. I even, with my friend, got on a subway to go across town, and we became aware that there were some sports fans on the subway, and they were off to a game evidently. So we said to them, "Oh, what are you going to watch?" And they told us they were off to watch the local hockey team, which I know is the Detroit Red Wings. And you know how I know that? It's because I've heard it in a radio jingle. Anyway, we were chatting with total strangers on the subway in Detroit, and nothing bad happened. In fact, it was all very jolly. We got a taxi back to our hotel before nightfall, and that was it. So I don't know. I don't necessarily buy this business of Detroit is a dangerous city. I had a perfectly nice time. For me, it was nice in Detroit. Anyway, you remember there was a question: which musical city is the most dangerous in the USA? Well, it could have been Detroit because, of course, it is the music city. It's the home of Motown. But it's not the answer to the question. Shock horror. Now, I hope this is going to work. Here on Wikipedia, list of United States cities by crime rate. What fun! Let's go down to the table. Oh dear, it's never good news when you have a note about population before you've even seen the table. They're listing their caveats. Often one obtains very different results depending on whether crime rates are measured for the city jurisdiction or the metropolitan area. Well, we go back to Los Angeles. I mentioned earlier that parts of what we might conceive to be Los Angeles are not technically the city of Los Angeles, and so this, I suppose, would have to be taken into account in this table. The table unhelpfully lists things alphabetically, first by state and then city, but I hope that there's a column here. See, it says yearly crime rate per 100,000 people. Then there's a section called violent crime, which includes murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. And here's the total for violent crime. And I hope that if I click this button here, there it is. It's now put the cities in order according to which is the most dangerous, in inverted commas. And I mean, it's worth saying, violent crime tends to be committed by people who know each other. If you are the victim of murder or rape or certainly assault, overwhelmingly the perpetrator will be known to the victim, possibly less so in the case of robbery. So my message there is, if you're a tourist, if you're a traveller, which is at the heart of this channel, it really isn't going to be a matter of concern, and you can have a perfectly nice time in Detroit without worrying about this stuff. So in the winning city, the most dangerous city in the USA, there are 2,501 cases of violent crime per 100,000 citizens. And then you go down to 1,925 for number 2 and 1,781 for number 3. So actually the one that's out in front is the leader by some margin. So let's scroll left and find out what those places are. Oh, I wonder if I can contrive this to do it in a sort of a radio format. Yes. Here's the top 3. Detroit, Michigan is only number 3. The one above it is Oakland, California. Who knew? And number 1, remember, it's a musical city. Any guesses? Well, it's the home of the blues, it's the home of soul and Stax Records. It is Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee. In the latest figures, which is for the year 2024, that is the most dangerous city in the USA, according to this table. And I've double checked with various news outlets, and it is often cited as the most dangerous one. Memphis, Tennessee. You might have been able to spot this because I did mark it down here on the map. And it is the official answer to our question. The most dangerous city in the USA, also a musical city, is Memphis. And just to add a little bit of beauty, that of course is named after a city of ancient Egypt, much like the casino that we were talking about earlier. Let's go on to question 7. And we've been a little frivolous, we've been a little light-hearted. This is anything but. When is the Indigenous American National Day of Mourning? Now, I wonder if you've heard of this. I admit that I haven't heard of the National Day of Mourning either before or since visiting one particular place in the USA. And it makes sense to say where that place is right off the bat this time. It's over here. In fact, I've got a map where I've zoomed in on the very area itself. So I'll write it on our main map. We are talking about Plymouth, Massachusetts. And here we can see on a map, courtesy of a creator called Noah Edits, there is what you might recognise to be Cape Cod and the coast of Massachusetts, and heading down toward Rhode Island here. Boston would be up here. Now, I don't know how well known it is, but the first attempted settlement of any sort by Europeans in the Americas was not here. It was much further south in the Carolinas, wasn't it? Is it Roanoke? Is that the name of it? So Plymouth is not the first place where Europeans landed in what is now the USA. Indeed, it's not even the first place in what is now Massachusetts, because their attempted first landing point was here in the tip of Cape Cod, in the place where we would now find the town of Provincetown. And I know that because I went there, we stayed there. That's the night that we stayed in Massachusetts. And on the afternoon, on the way there, we visited the town of Plymouth, where the Pilgrim Fathers in the Mayflower set foot on American soil for the first time, and therefore Plymouth, Massachusetts is known as America's hometown. I just contradicted myself. I think they attempted to set up harbour here. Whether they set foot there, I'm not sure. In any case, they discovered that they couldn't stay there, and so this is the place where they made landfall, and it's now synonymous with the arrival of the Pilgrim Fathers, Plymouth, Massachusetts. And you might notice the word there, which this has been rendered in various different spellings, but Wampanoag is the name given to the particular tribe of indigenous Americans who were resident in this area at the time. And it's easy to forget that what we could call indigenous Americans or Native Americans weren't just one breed. They weren't one group of people. They were hundreds of different tribes, and they would identify as such. Well, the Wampanoag were, it is said, the people who welcomed the Pilgrim Fathers, and they sat down, and the Pilgrim Fathers gave them a jolly good celebration, and they had a meal together, and the visitors, the Pilgrim Fathers, were officially thanking the Wampanoag for their warm welcome and their help in allowing them to set up harvest. This, of course, is the reason you have the holiday called Thanksgiving. That's supposedly what it's all about, although the real origin of Thanksgiving might be embellished by sort of 20th century storytelling. Actually, I think it was popularised in Lincoln's time. I think I remember reading that, and then it was officially decreed by FDR that it would be the fourth Thursday of November. Well, here in Britain, which is where I live, nobody pays a blind bit of notice to Thanksgiving. If it weren't for Black Friday, which we do know about, it would simply pass us by from one year to the next. Occasionally in your life, if you have an American friend, you might hear them saying Happy Thanksgiving, and you'd say, oh yeah, whatever. But if it weren't for that, I'm sure that for the majority of years in my life, nobody has mentioned Thanksgiving to me. It just doesn't register as a thing if you're not in the USA. And so I had no particular reason to visit this town because I'm a Thanksgiving fan. However, I used to live in a town or in a county in the southwest of England called Devon, and the largest city in that county is Plymouth. It is the Plymouth from where the Mayflower set sail, and the Plymouth after which all the other Plymouths are mentioned. So Plymouth, Massachusetts and Plymouth, Devon, England are kind of brethren. And a friend of mine who had been to Plymouth, Massachusetts said to me, if you do one thing on your road trip around the northeast of England, of the USA, it absolutely must be go to Plymouth Plantation. Plymouth Plantation is spelled Plimoth, I think. It may even not even have the U in it, Plymouth, but it's certainly a slight variation. Plymouth Plantation is, I know I've probably said this about other places, but it is the single finest tourist attraction I have ever visited anywhere. It's a bunch of people who basically pretend that they're just off the Mayflower and they've just set up home and they've just built their little straw huts and they're harvesting their vegetables and they're wearing shoein, not shoes, made of rudimentary kind of mud adobes, and they're recreating life as the Pilgrim Fathers would have known it, even down to the language that they speak. You know, they've done their research and they will speak to you in a slightly peculiar accent. Though the thing is, if you speak to some older people in the county of Devon in England that I mentioned, they do sort of talk in an accent a bit like that. You know, there's a slight American sound to it, and the people at Plymouth Plantation have done meticulous research into what those people would have spoken like, the vocabulary they'd have used, and I was working in radio at the time, although I was on holiday here, so I wasn't doing any work here. But I was talking to these people who were in character at Plymouth Plantation. Oh, what jobs do you do? And they were saying things like, oh, I grow vegetables and I take them to the market to sell, and you know, all of that sort of stuff. And one of them asked me back, oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I interview people for the radio. And they came back with the most brilliant answer, bearing in mind they were supposed to be from the 17th century. They said, what is this thing called radio? Those people could not be broken. Me and my friend were trying to kind of trip them up and get them to drop the character, because obviously they were actors, but they did not. They were absolutely sensational. So I pass on the same advice to you if you haven't been there yet. If you're in Massachusetts, go to Plymouth and go to Plymouth Plantation. Now, as for our question, when is the Indigenous American National Day of Mourning? Well, this is something I learned when I was at Plymouth Plantation, and as well as the actors. There is a museum and historical documents and all that sort of stuff. And in the museum there was a lot of art showing the first Thanksgiving as it has been portrayed. You know, that meal where the Pilgrim Fathers sat down with the Wampanoag natives and they had a meal thanking them for their assistance in developing their first harvest. And alongside the conventional folklore surrounding Thanksgiving, they also had some cartoons which sort of parodied it. And I'm going to quote from two of them. And although I'm not going to make fun of the native or the indigenous Americans, I do reserve the right to make fun of the Pilgrim Fathers because they came from where I come from. And so I'm going to use my most hammy British accent here, which you'll hear the quotes and you'll think, well, yes, that's quite right. One of the cartoons showed a solitary British man, meaning a white man, stepping ashore here at Plymouth, Massachusetts, and declaring to the cowering Native Americans who were there to greet him, he declared, greetings from the moral majority. And then another cartoon in a similar scene at the first Thanksgiving harvest. A white man was saying to one of the Native Americans, "I do love the way you make these yams. You must give me the recipe before your culture is obliterated from the face of the earth." Therein is the narrative behind the National Day of Mourning. It must be quite a sight on the seafront here at Plymouth, Massachusetts, on the day of Thanksgiving, when two processions take place. One is a recreation of the Pilgrim's Progress, the arrival of the Pilgrim Fathers, reenacting their procession to the church. And this apparently first happened in the early 20th century. And on the first occasion that it happened, apparently a known named descendant of the original Pilgrim Fathers was present, which is quite impressive because, bearing in mind, this is 300 years after the event. But then in 1970, the 350th anniversary of the European arrival, there began a conflicting march taking place on the same morning at Plymouth, Massachusetts, and it is the people descended from the tribe of this area, the Wampanoag, and they march in honour of the National Day of Mourning. In other words, the day in which people arrived who would eventually all but destroy their culture. And there's a fascinating entry that I was reading about it. Again, it's Wikipedia, but Wikipedia, among all the other great things that it's there for, it does a good job of recording the words of historical speeches. And here is the text of a speech by a man called Frank Wamsutter James on the first National Day of Mourning, November the 26th, 1970. I'm not going to read the whole thing there, but I'll pick out a few sentences from it. Remember, this is from the Native American perspective. "We forfeited our country. Our lands have fallen into the hands of the aggressor. We have allowed the white man to keep us on our knees. You, the white man, are celebrating an anniversary. We, the Wampanoags, will help you celebrate in the concept of a beginning. It was the beginning of a new life for the Pilgrims. Now, 350 years later, it is a beginning of a new determination for the original American, the American Indian." That is the word that he used in 1970. So, the National Day of Mourning for some indigenous Americans is the day of Thanksgiving. It's an interesting perspective, isn't it? And please tell me if I'm mistaken, but I don't think this is very well known. As I said, I have not heard talk of the National Day of Mourning on any occasion other than the one day I was in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and reading about it in a museum, so I have no idea whether this is a really noteworthy thing or not. Thanksgiving itself is not really on the radar if you're not in the USA, so that would explain why this isn't either. But if you are in the USA, tell me, do people know about this? Now we have 3 questions to go, including, to hardly lighten the mood, we'll be going to the American Civil War before too long. But first, question 8. What caused the fire that has been burning under Centralia, Pennsylvania since 1962? And again, I mean, I could say exactly the same as I was just saying. I don't know if this is a universally known thing or not. I have no idea. What I do know is that I first knew of this tale thanks to the doyen of travel writers, Bill Bryson. Oh dear, I knew this would happen. Where am I going to write? There's at Centralia, Pennsylvania, right in the middle of Pennsylvania. See if I can squeeze it in here. Centralia first came onto my radar thanks to Bill Bryson. He has written several travel books, as you may know, and one of them was about a road trip that he did around the USA. And I'm sorry to say, if you are a Pennsylvania fan or even a Pennsylvania resident, he did not have a good word for Pennsylvania. He was scathing about it, mostly on the field of irresponsible industry or negligent local authorities. And that is central to this tale of the town of Centralia. And just whilst I'm talking, I will see if I can get up on Google Maps the close-up map of Centralia. Because this is now a ghost town. You can see that it's technically there. You can see several roads. That would be the main street. In the 1960s, 70s, 80s, that would be an absolute textbook American main street. Little houses on either side. You'd have community shops, gently sloping down the hill, and then sort of hills and mountains in the background. And it was built here, the town was built here, because underground they found a seam of anthracite, which is a type of very brittle coal. And that coal is obviously a valuable commodity, and so upon its discovery, you can imagine that a town pops up. But let's see if this works. If I go onto the oh dear, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want the street view. I wanted the overhead view. Oh, that's a nuisance. Oh, but I tell you what, that's worth seeing. Yes, brilliant. What this image is there to convey is that there is almost nothing left in this town, because anthracite is very tricky to set fire to, but once it has been set on fire, it is even trickier, nay, impossible, to put the fire out again. And so it was that in the year 1962, the council burned a load of rubbish in a landfill pit. And of course they wanted to break the rubbish down and get rid of it. But having set fire to the rubbish, this fire then travelled into the underground seam of anthracite. And they soon discovered that they couldn't put this out. They thought to themselves, oh well, who's going to know? It's underground. Well, one person that did know was a boy called Todd Domboski. Brilliant American name, well done. Todd Domboski, he was a 12-year-old boy. He was getting on with whatever Pennsylvania boys did in the 1980s, I don't know, throwing rocks at a dog or something. And sorry, I've been reading too much Bill Bryson. When all of a sudden his garden fell 150 feet into the ground. Thankfully he wasn't killed. His older brother managed to pull him out, but smoke started coming out of the ground, and the authorities soon realised that their fire, which by now had been burning for 19 years, had come back to say hi. And they measured the levels of carbon monoxide in the air and decided that they were lethal. And they basically told all of the residents, you gotta go. Some people refused. Even to this day, a few older people have never accepted the government money to move out of Centralia. And so from a town with 1,000 people in 1981, that population is now down to, I think, I checked it the other day, censusreporter.org currently lists the population of Centralia, Pennsylvania as 1. And of course, they'll be there until they die, and then nobody will be left. But look at this fascinating image. This is one of the roads. I think this might not actually have been a street going through town, but a highway to the side of town. But the land has subsided, and as you can see, the road has now been abandoned, and the way that modern society responds to that is by coming along and drawing a load of genitalia all over it. Well done, the human race. That's so beautiful, but at the same time so sad. And you can see a bit of subsidence there. It's a fascinating place, and I was absolutely thrilled when I went there on my road trip with my friend, and by this time we had acquired a third mutual friend. So the three of us pitched up in Centralia, PA, expecting to have the town to ourselves, and much to our surprise, a coach load of geology students arrived as we were examining the genitalia on the road. Sorry, we were examining the way that the road had subsided and having in-depth adult discussions about how the land was weak because of the underground fire. And this geology professor showed up with her students, and she told us all about it. It was a great moment. Anyway, what's the actual answer to this question? What caused the fire that has been burning under Centralia, Pennsylvania since 1962? The short one-word answer would be stupidity. But I suppose we could say they burned a pile of, let's use the American word, trash, which set fire to the anthracite. And they still have not put it out. One does wonder. Presumably, it will burn itself out eventually. Who knows when that's going to be? Or will it? Will it just kind of pass the fire on to some other mineral underground, which in turn will spread the fire to neighbouring towns? Who knows? Anyway, there is the fun of Centralia, PA. And now, for more fun, here's the American Civil War. Which state was created by the American Civil War? Now, I'm sure you hardly need telling that the American Civil War occurred between April 1861 and April 1865. And I think it's probably fairly well known also that the cause of the Civil War was basically differing attitudes over slavery. You had the slave-owning southern states and the free, non-slave-owning northern states, and of course a whole load of states out west which weren't in the Union yet. And so that was the cause of the American Civil War. So just to answer this question, I'm going to zoom in on this page of Wikipedia where there is an interactive map. This is a page which is going to list the states of the USA in order of accession to the Union. And as you can already see, if you're watching as well as listening, someone has put here a map, and they are colouring in the states in the order that they became part of the Union. And so where are we at the moment? We must be around the time of James K. Polk and the Louisiana Purchase, which sort of brings in a lot of these lands further out to the west. And I'm just looking, keep your eye on this corner here, because any moment now you're going to get a state that came along in the time of the Civil War. There it is. And let's just wait for the rest of it, shall we? As we finally colour in the likes of Montana and Arizona, and it will end with, can't remember which way round it was it Alaska and then Hawaii, numbers 49 and 50. Yeah. So there you go. And if we just go down the page, you'll see that they're listed in order: Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and so on 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 and so on. And I'm just going to jump to the dates here to get to the 1860s. Here's the 1860s. And so we have 3 states in 1861, 1863 and 1864. This one actually is just before the Civil War. Kansas. Nevada comes along during the Civil War, though it is merely the Nevada Territory being allowed into the Union, sort of fulfilling the criteria for statehood. But in the middle there, on June the 20th, 1863, you have the creation of West Virginia, which is comprised of 50 counties that previously belonged to Virginia. And got a map here somewhere where we can zoom in and have a closer look. There's West Virginia. Now, before I talk about why West Virginia came into creation, let me take you back to that road trip that I was on in the northeastern states. Now, my friend and I are full signatories to the Treaty of Gili Gilios and Pfefferkas and Bogen by the Sea, which states that if you visit a town or a city and there is a song that mentions that place, you've got to sing the song as you arrive in town. I mean, that's just a given. So we'd been in Chicago and New York, and so, you know, we'd done all of that. And we knew as we approached, coming down from this western side of Maryland, we'd been in, I think it was probably the same day that we'd been in Centralia, so maybe we'd been poisoned by toxins in the air. We'd been in Centralia, drove down through Pennsylvania, crossed this little section of Maryland, and we were bound for West Virginia. And of course, we knew the song, and you can see from the relief indicated on the map, West Virginia is a mountainous state. It is the home of mountains, and so you get all of that. Take me home, country roads, to the place where I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, and all of that. We were giving it gusto in the car as we came down through Maryland. And what we were trying to do was we wanted to try to time our arrival in West Virginia with the point of the song at which we reached the words West Virginia. And we could see on the map on the GPS the Potomac River, which forms the border here between Maryland and West Virginia, and then here is the border between Maryland and Virginia. We could see the river coming up on the GPS. We could sort of sense how, in fact, the GPS may even have told us how many seconds we had to go. And so we thought we were going to get it bang on, and yet, when you cross over, in fact, let's see if we can go to Google Maps to just show you what is about to happen. And I'm going to enter the name of Harper's Ferry, which is the town in West Virginia that we were headed for. There it is. And as you can see, the town exists because it's at the confluence of the river. It's the Potomac and the Shenandoah. And we were coming down on this road here, coming along from Maryland, and here we are. You take me home, country roads, to the place I belong, West Virginia. And you're giving it a few verses. Drive, drive, drive. We approached this river. We crossed the river, expecting to be greeted with a sign that would welcome us to West Virginia, only to find that we were actually arriving in Virginia. And we followed the road round, and then in mere seconds we reached this bridge over the Shenandoah, and we were then in West Virginia. But we had all of 20 seconds in Virginia, which spoiled our song completely. And it therefore begs the question, well, why is West Virginia there? Why isn't it just Virginia? And it is all to do with the American Civil War, a far more serious thing than merely belting out a country song as you drive along. You can appreciate from the terrain, actually, if you look at the picture, the map that I was previously showing you, you can well imagine that. Look at where the mountains are. Here's West Virginia. Here's Virginia. And so the mountains are obviously a natural barrier. And so is it any wonder that even before the Civil War, the people to the west of the mountains would see themselves as very different from the people on the eastern side. And of course, this line here, those straight lines, the border of Pennsylvania and as was Virginia when that line was drawn in the, I think it was the 1760s. This is the Mason-Dixon line, drawn by draftsmen called Mason and Dixon, and it was intended to be a completely ordinary state boundary which would have faded from any consciousness were it not for the fact that it would become the frontier between North and South in the American Civil War. So you've got that arbitrary boundary drawn by draftsmen, but you also have the natural boundary. And apparently on this side, the western side, you had subsistence farming, you had sort of self-made people. Over here on the eastern side, you had slave-owning farmers, and in the 1850s, the whole area was under the governance of Virginia. And when came the time for the Confederacy to break away from the Union, and Virginia said, "We're going to go with the Confederacy. We're leaving the United States of America." These people over here in the western or the northwestern edge of Virginia said, "No, I don't think we will. We'll stay put, if you don't mind." And that's the story of Northern Ireland, by the way. If you're not a British viewer, maybe you don't know that Northern Ireland basically exists for exactly the same reason as West Virginia, that Ireland broke away from the Union with Britain, but the northern counties decided to stay. There is, writ large, the reason that West Virginia exists. And Harper's Ferry, that town that we were headed to, that has made its name in history because of its role in the Civil War as well. Of course, it's there because it's a river confluence, and it's named after a man called Harper who ran a ferry across the Potomac River. But in what would it have been, 1859, I think, a couple of years before the Civil War, there was an armed revolt, and there was a store of weapons in Harper's Ferry, and it was a revolt led by a man called John Brown, and it was slaves rebelling against the concept of slavery, so voicing the view of what would become West Virginia, that we don't approve of slavery. We're siding with the North. We're staying in the Union, whilst Virginia joins the Confederacy and remains a slave state. So the answer to our question, the American state that came into being because of the American Civil War, is West Virginia. Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads. Last, but certainly not least. I haven't put Harper's Ferry on the map. Or I should have moved on without doing so, because there's not much room to write it. It's here. It's that little blob there, right in the corner of West Virginia. Let's put it here. Save the best till last. This is one of my favourite questions ever. Who always wins? Sorry. Who always doesn't win? Who always loses the president's race at the Washington Nationals Games? This, of course, refers to baseball team in Washington, D.C. Now, I admit I am not a huge fan of American sport. I'm not a huge fan of sport in general, to tell you the truth. I like following sport for the same reason that I like following geography, if that's not a dumb thing to say. And this is because sport gives a lot of opportunity for collecting statistics and data and kind of gathering facts from it. And it's that I like about sport. But the actual business of chucking balls about, I can take or leave. And the reason for that is mainly because of my eyesight. I don't have good enough eyesight really to see what's going on. But when I was in DC, my chum, who lives in DC, is a British guy and is married to an American woman. He said, "How do you fancy on the? It's going to be your last night in town, your last night in the country, actually. How do you fancy going to a ball game? Because we've got free tickets if you want them. My wife works for the federal government, and they're I don't know if she was the team doctor or a colleague was the team doctor for the Washington Nationals. I can't remember, but one way or another, we had the opportunity to go to a Nats game because we'd got tickets courtesy of my friend's wife. So off we went. And although I can't really follow the action of a sports game, I love going to them because they're great atmospheres and it's brilliant for people watching. No more so than at the baseball in the USA, because half the people there weren't really bothered what was happening in the game. They were too busy eating hamburgers and chatting to each other. And so it was that I came to know about this bunch. This is about the most brilliant example of humanity and human ingenuity that I have ever seen. These are the presidents who, at every Washington Nationals game, between certain, I don't even know the technical terms, between parts of the play, there's a pause in the play, and they have four guys with big heads dressed as the four presidents from Mount Rushmore. Obviously there you've got Washington, Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt and Lincoln. And each game they run a race around the baseball field, and ostensibly it is supposed to be a genuine race to see who wins, except that Teddy Roosevelt apparently said at one time or another that he didn't much care for baseball. If you Google Teddy Roosevelt hated baseball, you'll find tons of articles all about it. He was not a baseball fan, and therefore, because he wasn't a baseball fan, the gag was that in this president's race, they would always contrive to make sure that Teddy Roosevelt didn't win. And it wasn't just some of the others trying to trip him up. Sometimes he himself would make sure that he didn't win by stopping to do his shoelaces up or something like that. Or it would be somebody who was obviously primed to kind of stick out a leg and trip him over. One way or another, as it was told to me when I went to this game in 2012 or 13, something like that, the president's race, they always make sure Teddy Roosevelt will never win. Or at least this is what I was led to believe. Because this article here, which is, I don't know who's the author of this page. I'm not sure. I'm going to put a link to this page in the description because it's such fun. This is a load of stats, and it lists the presidents here. It also lists a couple or three who were guests on occasion. William Taft. Oh, that would have been a good one to see because he was famously a very large man. Calvin Coolidge. He's the one who was famously taciturn, wasn't he? So maybe that would have been funny as well. And Herbert Hoover. Anyway, rules of the race. This is a paragraph that basically says there are no rules. And then there's a little note that says, most notable among presidents' races records is that Teddy Roosevelt's winless streak, which lasted from the race's inception on July 21st, 2006, through to the final race of the regular season on October the 3rd, 2012. Roosevelt lost 525 races before notching up his first victory. In other words, and I'm so disappointed to discover this, Teddy Roosevelt was eventually allowed to win. And when I discovered that, this flew in the face of what I was told when I was there watching it. I googled "let Teddy win," and yeah, there's an absolutely massive campaign, or there have been in the past, to go against this trend. And never mind the conceit that they always make sure Teddy always loses. There were mounting cries apparently to let him win. Here is such an article. Nationals history. Teddy finally wins the president's race. And this, by the way, is on a website. I think it's a blog, but it's a blog about the sports team itself, the Washington Nationals. And if you read this blog, you'll discover that on this particular season, I think they said 2012 there, the Washington Nationals have always been underperformers, let's say, not the most successful team in history. And then in 2012, they had a particularly good year. And so to mark this, they did finally let Teddy win. And after that, after the duck had been broken, he actually went to win a whole season. So it sort of changed the attitudes. What a wonderful atmosphere must have been in that stadium on that day. You know, everybody there would have known the joke that here's the president's race and Teddy always loses, and obviously there's comedy about how do they come up with a new conceit for how is Teddy going to win, how's Teddy going to lose this time. And on that particular day, the last day of the season, when the Washington Nationals have had their best season ever, they actually let Teddy win. Can you imagine what the crowd must have been like? Oh, gosh. I mean, it's sending shivers down my spine just thinking about it. I think it's so brilliant. And I know that technically this question isn't correct. It should say who usually loses, or I could have said who always lost for the first 525 times, but you know, that's dull. The conceit is still at the heart of the question, isn't it? Who always loses the president's race at Washington National Games? It is Teddy Roosevelt, because he apparently declared that he hated baseball. And so they decided 100 years later that they would do this thing that made fun of him week after week. And that, above all the other glorious things that I have mentioned, is reason enough to love the USA. Well done, USA. Thank you for staying to the end of this ridiculous quiz. If you're still there, do please press that like button, subscribe to the channel so that you can join me for another gentle jaunt around the world sometime. And best of all, please do leave comments if you've got experiences of any of the things I've talked about, particularly if you've got corrections or things which can further the conversation. Then I'd be delighted to hear from you. And in that way, you can widen the community and help the channel grow. So, until next time, here on Travel Trivia ASMR, bye for now.